So for anybody just tuning in, I think it was 2 days ago now, Substack basically announced they're an app. So they have a proprietary app. And just to give you the quick 30,000 foot view, what this basically means is that a lot of the content, rather than being read in a reader's inbox, they're going to just read it on the Substack app instead. And, this could have different implications on obviously your reach, your business, good and bad. And so Tim wrote a really good article breaking this down from his perspective. We're going to go through it here and then talk about some of the wider implications too, just in terms of like owning your audience, what it means for your business, best practices there, stuff like that. So take me through your initial thoughts when you saw this announcement and what you think it means for people listening to this who might be like sending their own newsletters.
Definitely. And I'm thrilled that you wanted to talk about this. Obviously, I wrote that on my personal blog on timstodds.com. And so it's like a small audience in comparison to Copyblogger. And so anytime there's like a handful of people that when they say like, hey, I really loved what you wrote, it always makes you feel good because like you want to be a writer's writer, And yeah, so I appreciate the kind words. And I'm thrilled to be talking about this subject because for the last 15 years, Copyblogger has been borderline militant about this concept of like, don't trust anybody. They're all going to steal from you. Like, it doesn't matter what they say. Own your audience, own your audience, own your audience. And I have personally slid a little bit because I built my first company on Facebook, really. But this is kind of a perfect segue into the main point because when I first started Sober Nation, when Facebook was really coming out, we had like 20,000 followers and I was amped about it. And I would write blog posts and I would sit there on the live Google Analytics, post it on Facebook and watch these things explode. And then 3 years later, the infamous bait and switch from Facebook comes out and I'm like, wow, like Copyblogger was right the whole time. And that's when I really started getting more involved with SEO and email. So even still, I have adjusted a little bit more towards that like militant viewpoint. And I view social media as a tool. It's not a platform for me. It's a tool to funnel traffic to my platform. And I still think that's the correct answer. And so in the case of Substack, this one like hurts a little bit deeper. And the only reason why is because in the back of my mind, I just knew the whole time, there's no way this can last. There's no way this can last for two reasons. One, just because they have huge funding behind them. And the people that fund them traditionally fund centralized data collecting, selling apps, So it's just kind of like the best way to predict the future is to look at history, And I was like, there's no way that A16 is just going to be cool with it and like not try to centralize it. And then also just because I just knew every time I would see, because what Substack does is a lot of people don't change their root domain, So it's just like ethan.substack.com. Mm-hmm. And so every time I saw that, I just remember thinking to myself, this is so obvious. You're building on somebody else's stuff. You're building on somebody else's stuff. And when I talked to Hamish, it was always like, no, you have control of your email. You have control of your email. And now this is just like a little slip and slide because sure, you do still have control of your email. But then basically what they're doing with the app is making it so that like your email list is irrelevant because you can send it to your email if you want. But we, being Substack, being the app, are going to intentionally draw the attention away from your inbox into our app for whatever it is that they have planned, because they got something planned or else they wouldn't have done this.
Yeah. And I guess just to give people a little bit of context too. So there are some specific downsides that like the one that Tim just mentioned. So you're now competing harder for attention. There's some upsides, some potential upsides, which we'll get into. And there are other sort of points along the Substack storyline in which similar challenges have come up. So early on, as you mentioned, like everyone builds on a Substack domain, or a lot of people build on Substack domains. Yeah. And one of the issues with that, it makes it a lot easier to build your website and to publish content. And so Substack was kind of like the publishing tool for writers who weren't really technical, which, as you point out in your article, that's that's a lot of them. So that's great. And it's a really great kind of smooth onboarding. The challenge, though, is that you're basically building a valuable web asset somewhere on the internet that you don't own. And that can mean a couple of things. So, in terms of publishing, like you're building all this social or this search engine optimization and domain authority for Substack, not for you. And that becomes an issue when you then try and go launch other projects or basically monetize in any other way. Then there are potential controversies, like one that you mentioned in your article, a friend of ours, Cody Sanchez. Yeah. Now, you're going to have to give me the details on this. So it sounds like she was locked out of her account. Was that definitely because she tried to sell something, or was that just a guess?
Well, that's what she wrote in a Twitter thread that she put together.
Do you know if that was kind of her guess, or did like Substack tell her like you put
No, I think that's what they said. I think that's what they told her. So if you ask Cody, she logged into her Substack. She was banned from it due to violating terms and agreements. And the reason was because Substack wants you to sell subscriptions to a paid newsletter. So basically, you create content for free to more or less advertise your paid newsletter. And she was creating content for free to do what we all do, which is to generate an email list so that she could sell a product. And just because that product wasn't Substack's product, which they get a 10% cut of, they said, no, this is against our terms and violations. And they killed her account.
It sounds reasonable. That could have been it. I know other platforms like what's the course where you build a course? Udemy is similar. Like you can send messages to all your students, but you can't promote non-Udemy products in those sends. And so it really kind of is this issue of building in a space where you don't have full autonomy and control. And I don't know if we'll get into this deeper in a little bit, but it's like, I think what we're going to see as these platforms continue, I think the platforms are going to continue to consolidate power. And to be honest, similar to you, I don't think Substack's going anywhere because there's enough non-technical people out there who just want to get eyeballs and don't really have a path to do that, or don't feel that they have a path to do that. Also, I think from a reader's perspective, like email's gotten crazy, so there's definitely a benefit for the readers. And as long as the readers continue to come, the writers will continue to come, So I don't think Substack's going anywhere over this, but it is something that I think creators have to ask themselves, what sandbox do you want to play in? And really what I think is going to happen is you'll see a change in the type of talent on Substack and how people use it. I'm kind of torn on this one because there's this sort of like dirty little secret about paid newsletters, which is you don't actually need people to open them or read them because they're not paying. Like it's not monetized the same way that ads are. What you need people to do in order to run a paid newsletter business is people need to feel like they either get value from having that subscription or that they could get value or they will get value one day when they finally have time to sit down and read everything, right? Which is very common. I pay for multiple newsletters that I plan to sit down and read one day. So I'm a little torn on this because I'm like, well, yeah, technically they're not seeing your content as much, or they may not be seeing you in the inbox. But if you're running a paid newsletter, I don't know if you need it. So tell me this, because you looked into this closer than I did. Do you still get new subscribers' email addresses, or are they kind of sunsetting that feature?
The app?
Well, yeah, like I would assume, I don't know how it works, but let's say somebody is a Substack app user and they stumble across your newsletter on the app and they sign up. Are you still going to get their email, or is Substack going to like roll that into some other list where they're like, these are your app users or something like that?
You know what, man? That is a really great question. And I didn't even think about that because, well, I'm going to check it out while we're recording. I'll do it next time you speak or whatever. But before I download the app again, let's assume that if you're on the app and you have a feed of all these newsletters, you do still subscribe to emails. So let's assume that Substack is like being the good guy and they're still providing data to their users. the part for me is how long is that going to last for?
Right.
Because there's only one reason to have a free product on an app, especially because now they're in the app game. So you know what that means? They're in the iPhone game, And so like the only way that ends is that they're going to leverage the data and they're going to leverage the app to sell ads. And so if they do leverage the app to sell ads, then the inbox is the last place that they want to go, unless they do like Anchor, unless they do a potential Anchor thing where Substack itself, and this might be kind of cool, actually, I wouldn't hate this too much, but where Substack itself creates an ad network where as a Substack user, you can use their ads to put in your own free newsletter, So it's like maybe if Substack creates the ad network and then the writers who use Substack to send their free newsletter can just cherry pick some of those ads and find a different way to monetize. I wouldn't hate that so much because that's still at least leaning towards servicing the writer. Mm-hmm. But once again, if history is the best predictor, this ends in one way. They start leveraging the app to sell data, to sell ads, and then eventually get really, really pissed at Apple because Apple owns the whole game anyway.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I hadn't thought about the creation of the ad network, although you're right, that does seem almost like a potentially inevitable step. It reminds me, though, just on the drive in this morning, I listened to Joe Rogan's interview with Mr. Beast, which was really eye-opening. So I know who Mr. Beast is, but I don't watch any of his stuff. For anybody listening who also doesn't maybe keep up with him, he is the most subscribed to YouTube channel on all of YouTube and the biggest earner on all of YouTube. And they actually didn't go through the numbers, but he's making like several tens of millions of dollars a year on YouTube.
It's silly how much money he makes.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And he does these crazy videos too. So, I mean, he like the thing that he got the most press for recently was after Squid Games came out.
You didn't watch that?
Squid Games or his version of Squid Games?
His version of it. The Squid
No,
Games.
I've never seen anything from Mr. Beast.
Oh man, you got to watch it. It was so creative. It was so fun.
He definitely seems so. After listening to this, I'm more interested to go back and check out some of his stuff. I was always kind of like somewhat interested, but it's clear just from listening that he's incredibly passionate about what he does. And I'd be keen to kind of see how he's grown over the years. So when Squid Games first came out, I guess anybody who's, again, like me, didn't catch this, he paid to build a facility that was basically the reenactment, a stage that reenacts Squid Games. And he brought like 400 people on to reenact his own version of Squid Games. And the crazy thing is that video has gotten something like 230 million views. And Netflix has 220 million subscribers or something like that. So his YouTube video literally dunked on whatever this series was that was incredibly popular. So pretty cool stuff. But the reason I bring him up is because Rogan asked him a similar question. I mean, here's a guy who's built an entire empire on YouTube, and he's relying on the YouTube algorithm in order to continue spreading his content. And Rogan basically said, he's like, do you ever think about going to do your own thing? Because you could own all the servers, you could display all the ads, you could get 100% of the profit instead of sharing it all. And then also you'd own like your audience. And his take was absolutely not. And I don't know how much of that was because he knows YouTube execs are definitely listening, but he seemed like he was not interested at all in moving off platform because he's like, what I love to do is film. I love the culture of YouTube. And he's like, even if my audience did follow me to somewhere else, he's like, I added 32 million subscribers last year. How big would that be if I ran my own platform? It'd probably be like 2 million, So to your point about the ad network, if you have a platform, it's still incredibly risky. And I think I'm on your side, and we laid out this, this framework for kind of building one of these creator companies. The thing that he is not talking about there is that Mr. Beast also makes money through, the restaurant, 1,600 ghost kitchens and snack company and like swag companies and all this stuff. So he's got products in the back end of this that are continuing to make money outside of just his ad monetization. But it sounds like these platforms, if if the platform builds with creators in mind, they can help you reach a lot more people. And that can be cool. So Substack still might be doing that, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But as a creator, you either got to be number one, right? Like Mr. Beast level, so that your opinion matters to the platform, or just be incredibly cognizant of the fact that the phrase that Tim Ferriss always uses is he says, building a business based on one of these platforms is like building the most profitable McDonald's in the world atop an active volcano. Because you never know when something's going to change and your entire business is going to get obliterated. So did you have a chance to look it up while I was
Yes, you don't, by the way.
What's that?
You subscribe, you don't get the email. So if you have the newsletter and I'm on Substack, it's just like a subscribe button, which basically just means that your most recent post will be on the feed. So it's like the same social network type deal.
And I just to battle test this a little bit more and make sure we're giving Substack as much of the benefit of the doubt as possible. When you log into the app, I'm assuming your email address is related to that. Do we know? Maybe they're giving you the email address anyways. That's associated with that user. Do we know if that's the case?
That's a good point, because when you log into the app, you have to confirm your email address. So maybe when you subscribe, the app already knows that it's my email address that is subscribing to this newsletter. And okay, you know what?
I think we can test this live because I actually have a Substack newsletter.
Oh, do you? Okay, great. What is it?
It's nobody sign up to this because I don't actually update it.
I thought that was the name of it.
That'd be a great newsletter name. So for everybody listening, this is just something that I test these platforms to see what the user experience is like and stuff. So I don't actually write for this, but it's called AI for Writers. And there should be one article up.
Okay, I'm going to click subscribe. Are you logged in?
I'm going to go log in. It might take me a second to figure out. I forget which. I think I used my Proton Mail account.
Call me GPT-3. That's funny.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Did I ever tell you about this when we were experimenting with GPT-3?
No, but I read the article. I read the newsletter you guys did. It was probably like 8 months ago, something like that.
No, this is different. So this was when GPT-3 first came out. So I think that was like mid 2020 or something like that.
Yeah.
I was playing with it and I wanted to see exactly what the capabilities were. So I fed it the first paragraph or so of Moby Dick and then just had it keep writing paragraphs. And the results were... What's that?
They call me Ishmael.
Basically. So for anybody who is interested in this, you can just Google GPT-3 Moby Dick and it'll come right up. I think it's the top result for that. But it was fascinating, man. This changed my view on writing because what ended up happening was at first the computer wrote profound, like beautiful copy. I'll read a little bit of it here real quick. But gradually, the way these text engines work is they're basically trying to guess the next word in the sentence. And so if they start to get a little bit off track, they'll get further and further and further off track. And it just ended in this insane territory. So this is a slight diversion, but do you want me to read a little bit of this or should we just send people there?
But to be sure, the reason of this, as of many other things, is too obvious to be told. Why is it that men love to be sailors, but not cod fishers or herring fishers?
Okay.
So good.
So yeah, I fed it the first 5 or 6 sentences of Moby Dick. So that's the famous "Call me Ishmael." Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. Fed it a handful of sentences like that. And then you basically, with this tool, you just click generate, and the computer keeps generating text. You kind of hear like the lilts and the rhythms of the way the original copy was written. This is where the computer took over. So here's the last sentence of the original writer. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name right now. But he says, if they but knew it, all men, or almost all men in their degree, sometime or other, cherish very nearly the same feelings towards the ocean with me. Right? That's the last human written sentence. And then the computer takes over and goes, as you read, but to be sure, the reason of this, as of many other things, is too obvious to be told. Why is it that men love to be sailors, but not cod fishers or herring fishers? It's because a sailor's life is a freer life than that of anybody else. He's not chained to an oar. He's not shackled to anything. Rolex watches for sale. It just inserted this, but it goes on. It's like the very moment he comes aboard, he steps out of the old harness and falls to promenading the deck like a man in a garden. He's not expected to pull hard and sweat and blubber and gasp and swear and get red in the face. No, all that was to be done ashore, and being done, it is over, and he comes to sea. He must have liberty too. He must be able to have his own way and do what his own way bids him. And then this is the part, I got chills when I read this. He's not forced to take his chance with 1,000 others in a 10,000th part of a square mile, to all appearance too small for a graveyard. A computer wrote that, dude. And when I read it, I was like, all right. So writers, obviously important, right? But a lot of the magic of writing is really in what you perceive.
Yeah.
Like what the reader experiences, not necessarily what the writer is thinking. So I'll just wrap this up very quickly. So it starts off beautifully. Then it starts to get a little bit off track. He starts to kind of like, it just doesn't make sense. So a couple more paragraphs down, it says, this is a brief preamble, but I thought it necessary to make. Now, I have a fancy that if a man should succeed in what I'm going to attempt, it will be almost as great a wonder as if he should succeed in climbing to the moon. Yeah. At least if the man had never been there before, that is my way of thinking about it. So it's like, it kind of makes sense, but it's like, I don't know if this really makes sense. It gets a little bit weirder, and then it just goes completely off the rails. Here's the last couple of sentences. Now, one word more, and I will end this preamble. I have not been at sea very long, and yet long enough to glimpse from the mastheads of what I may call the heart of the whale, the largest land animal, as the largest sea animal. It's a sort of stupendous tub, a bathtub. And when you have seen one, you've seen all. The whale is just such another. In shape, he's not so much like a tub as a Holland cheese. For in one end, he is like a cheese, and in the other, he is like a tub. And if you will have a small cheese made, it will have the shape of a great tub. But if you have a tub and turn it upside down and make 4 or 5 holes in the bottom and 2 or 3 in the top, then it will have the shape of a cheese. Here's the last sentence. I do not say it will weigh just as much as a cheese, for I do not know. But I do say that it will weigh very nearly as much.
It's amazing.
So for all the writers out there, AI ain't coming to take your job too soon.
You got some time.
You got some time. Yeah, I got the login link, so I'll check and see. If you subscribe to that, I'll see if I end up getting your email address.
Okay. So coming back, I have AI for Writers, which is the Substack that we're at on my app, on my Substack app. And I'm about to hit the subscribe button on my app. It says, you're subscribed to the free plan. A confirmation email was sent to you with an additional upgrade option. All right. So I guess maybe I can confirm my email. Choose a subscription plan. It upsells me, which is pretty cool, to try to go for the paid subscription. Do you see my email? No, look at that. Okay, hold on. I'm going to put in my camera. So what it does after I subscribe is just sharing my screen.
I can see your camera in the top corner there. Yeah.
Because it just sends me to the homepage of your Substack.
Oh, wow. So you have the option to submit your email.
Yes, exactly. So I'm subscribed to your Substack, but then it sends me another email that says, would you want to upgrade? And upgrade means upgrading to the free plan, which means actually subscribing my email address.
That's weird. I think I actually, yeah, we'll have to say in the show notes whether or not that email ever comes through, because it seems like it doesn't, but I can't actually get into my email right now in order to check this. So I'll figure out which email I signed up and created that account under after we're done here, and we'll see for certain. But it is looking like this might be a nail in the coffin of sharing your list, which obviously, if that's the case, and we don't know for certain if it is, but if it is, that's a problem. Like your list, that's all you own. That is your business.
Yeah. And when you were talking about Mr. Beast as well, I'm really, really happy that we went down that GPT rabbit hole, but I want to make sure I don't lose my train of thought because that was amazing. So here's always the rebuttal to it, right? It's like, what are you talking about? I have built my entire platform on Twitter and look at all the success I have. But what you don't think about is the anomalies involved there because there are, have you ever read Deep Work by Cal Newport?
Yep.
Well, in Deep Work, he reminds me that the average uh, follower count on Twitter is like 280 followers or something. And so for 99% of the people who aren't going to get to even 50,000 followers, which really is like the bare minimum you need to even be able to sell like a sponsored post. And even if you do sell a sponsored post at 50,000 followers, what are they going to do? I'd pay like $10 for that, you know?
Right.
So if you're one of like the regular Joe Schmoes like you and me who have like 3,000, 4,000 followers, which by the way, I'm still sure is probably 1% of all Twitter followers, then what are you going to do? Like you're screwed. You can't actually make a living off of building followers on like a rented platform. And just the economics are as such where if you have 1,500 email addresses, you can legitimately make 50 grand a year. You really can. Let's say you have a course that you put together that you're selling for $700. You can sell one a week and you can like make a living and do what you want to do when you want to do it. And so it's just the economics are as such where as this dream of being like a TikTok star or even having like a huge Substack that everybody talks about is so tempting, but it's so statistically improbable that it's like, why bother? And so like, this is why I keep getting involved in these conversations. And like, it's always the people that have succeeded on social platforms that are the ones saying like, this is where all the attention is, right? That's the buzzword, like garner attention. But it's kind of bullshit because that attention is so diluted. And the whole point of owning your list is to have attention that is like yours. And so if you have an email list of, let's be a little more realistic. Let's say 5,000 people. You have 5,000 people on an email list that like really, really, really follow you. You can make a living, but you can have you can have 5,000 TikTok followers and 5,000 Twitter followers and 5,000 Instagram followers and 5,000 followers everywhere and make nothing. And so it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked before about just how powerful niche lists are, and I've got a friend who runs that list specifically dedicated to people who run photo booth businesses, and there's 1,000 people on that list, and it generates 6 figures a year. So it really is possible to do this with small lists, and I'm glad you mentioned this because I want to try and tie a couple of points together here. One, I think first, let's get this out on the table. There are so many people who have huge social followings but don't monetize well.
Yeah.
Just having an enormous platform in and of itself is not valuable. You need the other like capabilities to build a business, to know how to monetize, to know how to like have longevity, all these types of things. What I think, there's a couple of things that set Mr. Beast apart in a way that I don't even know if these are replicable, right? Like one, listening to him is the inhuman level of obsession that he has over the YouTube platform. Yeah. I mean, he started uploading videos at 11. He's 23 now. So that's 12 years of dedicated practice. But even inside of that, he had something like 3 years where that was just all he was doing all day long. He would get on these mastermind calls with a handful of friends who were also trying to build YouTube channels, and they would just be on like Skype from 7 in the morning until 10 at night talking through what makes good videos. And they would go to bed, get up, do it over and over again. Very much getting in that like 10,000 hours thing, except he's put 10,000 hours into just figuring out what makes a good thumbnail, and another 10 into video editing, and another 10 into. So at this point, I don't think there are many people who can really come close to him because this is the thing that he lives for. The other thing that's very unique about him is that he plows all of the money that he makes back into making videos. This was shocking because he talks about it with Rogan, but he doesn't, he's making millions and millions of dollars a year and he's 23. He doesn't really ball out on anything. He tried it once, bought some like fancy clothes, and he's like, I didn't even like it. He's like, it was very uncomfortable and somebody broke in and stole all his shit. And so at some point, he's like, he just plows all the money back into the business. And this is an important point, which I've been thinking a lot about recently. And I think it relates to this concept of monetizing wealth through products. At the end of the day, the biggest problem these Substack writers are going to face is that their writing is what's making them a living. It's not acting as marketing to sell another product. And I think, I don't think I'd ever thought about it in those terms before, but you don't really want your writing to make you a living, right? Because if that's the case, the writing itself is under pressure to perform, when really what you want to do is you want to be selling products so that you can build products, like say, even if they're written, it's like a book or a course or something like that. You build it when you have something to say that's important and different. And then the bulk of the writing that you're doing through the newsletter is like expanding on ideas, engaging with your audience, just kind of maybe marketing the product. But they're not actually paying to read your newsletter every week, So he is able to plow all the money back into the business because he lives this frugal lifestyle. And the full circle point that I was hoping to make with this was, if you want to be free as a content creator or a writer, you cannot rely on your content to make you money. And you can't rely on these platforms to deliver your audience. And there's a couple ways to do that. Obviously, one is to like own your own list, but the other is to make sure that you're living in such a way that if your income, like if your writing is making you money and you suddenly take a hit, it's not going to change how you think about your work, the work of the writing,
No, totally. You nailed it. And so there's 2 points there. One is the pressure, because I don't know if anybody really, really talks about this enough, but writing is like the hardest thing in the world to do. It's brutal. It's so hard. And there's such a huge difference between writing for teaching, informing, entertaining, and writing to deliver a product. Whereas the mindset from it is very, very different. And I do think that as soon as you cross that threshold, it's sort of just a ratcheting effect, which leads to my second point, which is another reason why I really, really don't like the Substack app. And that's going to be like the commoditization of writing. Because what happens with all of these platforms? They all figure out the one thing that works and they all do that thing. So like on Facebook, it's like, be a Trump supporter and yell something terrible about liberals. You know what I mean? And it's like, great, you went viral on Facebook. Be Ben Shapiro. Just be a different version of Ben Shapiro. On Instagram, it's, well, we know how those go. You know what I mean? Like they're very like sexually oriented type content. And the people that do well on those kind of platforms, it's usually very sexualized. If you want to do well on Twitter, like, you be one of the fortune cookie bros, or you be into Bitcoin. You know what I mean?
Whoa. Slow your roll, man.
Yeah.
Twitter's the last bastion of profound thinking in the free world, I think.
Yes, it is. Twitter's all we got left. And now that Substack is getting into this game, it's just like the same exact thing is going to happen. I think we're going to find so many writers who have to replicate this thing over and over again because they're dependent on, like you said, on the first thing, which is like, you need the writing to be the product. And so if the writing is the product, then eventually all products become commoditized because you got to get it as cheap as you can, as fast as you can. And that part, that's what really, really bums me out, because when I had Hamish on my podcast a while ago, like he's a writer and he made Substack because he saw that journalism was being dictated by advertisers. And so, like true journalism just turns into fucking BuzzFeed because BuzzFeed goes viral. And now it's like sad that after all of that, it's fallen into exactly what he didn't want to be.
Well, I think that's where I'm still torn on this, and I have to think through it a little more and dig a little deeper personally just to understand what Substack is after. Because, like I said, with the paid content model, the one sort of benefit of all this is that, or the benefit of paid is that you no longer have to grab attention, right?
Yeah.
Like, because you make your money whether somebody reads the newsletter or not. And that may sound like I'm advocating that you shouldn't care about your readers. Obviously, you care about your readers, but what paid allows people to do is write things that are not BuzzFeed articles, literally. So I don't know. To me, the biggest impact of this seems to be that you may not be controlling your entire list, and you may not be getting as many opens as you previously were. And if that's the case, I mean, that certainly sucks. But I don't know that it's going to force people who are running paid products to write more spam type articles. Because it's like, however you were growing the list beforehand, you're going to keep growing it that way. And I would assume even if people are subscribing inside the app, they're going to need to, they're still paying you. So I think that's not a perfect assessment though, because a lot of these Substack writers run a free Substack with a paid option. And I think that's kind of a mistake as well for exactly this reason, right? Now they're in a position where the free product, they don't own any of the information. And the only reason you run a free product is to create distribution for paid products. If anybody's kind of just tuning in, this is your first episode listening, go back, reference the episode that we did in, what was it, December, on the creator model.
Economy. Yeah. And I think you really nailed it, where that's the difference between creator economy and content writing. Like creator economy is your creation is the product. There's no separation. Whereas content marketing, like your content is a means to an end. Yeah, like we're getting into the weeds a little bit here. I just, for me, it's just a bummer because I really, really like Substack. The like writing on Substack is great. And I really mean that. And there's another thing that also doesn't get talked about too much, but something that Substack really, really did well. And that's if you're on the back end of Substack, if you're writing and you embed a tweet or you embed a YouTube video, when you send that email, Substack automatically takes the iframe and turns it into a visual so that when the reader is reading the email, they actually see the tweet and they actually see the YouTube clip, which is very difficult because email hates iframe and those things are embedded as iframes. And so I always thought that was another really great advantage where these internet bloggers, so many times they reference tweets. So they say hey, check out this video. Whereas if you wanted to do that through WordPress and then do it through an RSS feed, what happens is it's just a white box, basically, where the tweet is or where the video is that can't come through because the RSS feed can't transcribe the iframe into an image. And so because of that, because of how beautiful Substack is to write on, because of the creativity on the platform, and just my passion for writers and yes, there's finally a space for them to be free, I just, maybe I'm being pessimistic, but I just don't see this ending in any other way other than a commoditized, endless feed that goes forever and ever and sprinkles in an ad every 9 inches or so. Because this is the most valuable real estate in the world. This stupid little screen that we all carry in our pockets is the most valuable real estate in the world. So why would they be a $1 billion company when they could be a $100 billion company, right? It's just no way. There's no way they don't do it.
So what can people do in order to adapt around this?
This brings back to the very beginning where we talked about gravity, right? The same.
Nothing. Nobody escapes gravity. There's nothing you can do.
No, the same things that you always did is what you do. You know, you get a WordPress site, get a ghost site, the only things you ever own on the internet is your domain and your email list. Like that's it. Nothing else is yours. And so I'm turning into like the old guy who's a curmudgeon that's like the grumpy grandpa on the internet saying like, oh, you kids. And it's still so true. Post your shit on your website and collect emails into Aweber, MailChimp, or ConvertKit. I'm a ConvertKit guy, but and that's it. And then everything else you do should drive traffic back to that site.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think this is one of the things that that kind of saved Cody as well, is that she leverages several different email platforms, but centralizes the list in one spot. So like, and I don't know how often she runs backups or anything like that. I mean, I'd probably recommend weekly or so, just depending on how fast you're growing. But I agree. Again, we laid this out in the previous episode. Everything kind of funnels back to your list. You need to own that. And then you can use these platforms to point to it. And I think the trick becomes figuring out how to, I think there's kind of two things. How do you write effectively in such a way that you can basically sit down, develop an idea in a short period of time, and figure out how best to then ship that idea off to the different platforms where it's then going to work to drive people to your email list, right? So you don't have, like, if you're on Twitter and TikTok and Substack and Instagram, you don't have to come up with 4 completely different ideas in a day. You need to be really good at taking your one idea and splitting it off into those 4 different domains.
You know what we should do? We should have Ross Simmons on the podcast. You ever talk to Ross?
No, what's his deal?
Well, his Twitter handle is the best ever. It's called The Coolest Cool. And his whole entire agency is all about taking one piece of content and chopping it down into 1 million. So he's very much on the idea of like, stop creating content, like create one piece a month even. And then within that one idea, you have one long form that can turn into like 4 or 5 different 500-word essays that can turn into like 100 tweets that you can repurpose into Instagram videos and a YouTube video. Because like I hear what you're saying. It makes it difficult to continuously create like long form work that resonates, because you don't have, like, let's be honest, the value of social networks is that they help you ratchet your followers. Like there's a reason why just the act of being on Twitter makes it easier to grow on Twitter, right? Like they help you with that. And so without that, you're really, really on your own. And so the trick when you're posting on your own site is to take one idea and then break that idea up into like 1 million different ideas, and then use those ideas to post on social platforms, which then comes full circle and draws that attention back to your website. So I wonder if Ross would explain that to us. He's really good at it.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I'd love to have him on. And in introducing that idea, you reminded me of the second thing that I was trying to think of, which is, so if one challenge is figuring out how to divide up your ideas, the next one is figuring out how best to pull traffic off of those platforms to your site. And this varies from platform to platform, right?
Yeah.
I take this Reforge growth class, which is great. Have you heard of the Reforge guys?
I've definitely heard of them. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's expensive. The company pays for it, but anybody who can get access to it, if you're interested in like growth or product stuff, it's some of the best training I've seen on that. One of the great things that they say there is when you're first starting, like everybody that you want as a customer, you're going to get them by pulling their attention off of another platform.
Yeah.
So Airbnb, the classic examples, they would post Airbnbs over on Craigslist, right? And people were, because they knew there were people there who were kind of surfing around for local listings or even just interested in real estate. But the point is, if you're starting something new now, Like all the readers are already out there. Sure, some new ones might come online,
Yeah.
but they're already out there and they're already doing something. And so you're going to have to figure out how to carve traffic off those other sources. And that is sort of phase 2 of embracing the fact that you have to build your own list off these platforms and leverage the platform like a tool, like you said in your article.
So true. That's something that I clearly already knew, but I never thought of it in that way. Like it's impossible to make something from nothing, right?
Mhm.
Like the things are already out there. You have to take them from different spots. And so
Right.
in that, I think over the last 15 years with Copyblogger, that has been one of those messages that I think gets lost because people hear, don't waste your time on social media, but then they think, okay, where am I going to get this from? You know, am I going to walk down the street and just hand out a business card to everybody and be like, sign up for my email list? That doesn't make sense. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, it's like when you say don't waste your time on social media, that's more profound than I think most people might think. It's don't waste your time on social media.
yeah.
You know, like you're not just there to grow on social media, you're there to get attention and funnel it back to your site. So everything you do should be seen through that lens. If you're going to
that
spend
was
any
so
time there
good,
at all.
Ethan. Holy smokes. I'm so hyped up after hearing that. That was so good. Don't waste your time on social media. Oh, fucking right.
So there you go. You heard it
Yeah,
here
that's
first.
it, man. We got to stop there. Okay. A couple quick housekeeping notes. I got a few DMs about our last episode. I will share them with you, Ethan. They made me feel really, really good. It was out of our comfort zone to talk about some of those things, but I'm glad that we did. And I appreciate everybody's feedback. And I appreciate the fact that most people in this world are good. So thank you for your good vibes and thank you for trying to spread love in the world. Like us on Spotify, on iTunes. We appreciate all the support on the show. This has been a ton of fun. This is one of my favorite episodes that we've done so far. And thank you. Anything you want to say, Ethan?
No, that's it. I'll just echo the thanks to everybody who keeps reaching out and sharing positive feedback. We see it all. Love to read it. And if there's anything you want to share, hit us up on Twitter at damn_Ethan. And Tim is it
Tim
Stodds?
Stodds.
Tim Stodds.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next week.